One night, two surprises. Luna had known struggle all her life. Growing up in an orphanage, she learned to rely on herself, never expecting anyone to lend a helping hand. She often watched other children being adopted, yearning for the warmth of a family, for a place where she truly belonged. The loneliness gnawed at her, leaving an ache in her heart that never seemed to fade. Yet she was determined not to let her circumstances define her. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, she channeled her emotions into her studies, pushing herself to excel. She worked tirelessly, earning a full scholarship to study law at one of the most prestigious universities in the country, determined to carve out a better future for herself. But deep inside, she still harbored a quiet hope. One day, she would have a family of her own, one that she would cherish and protect. However, university life was far from easy. Though she was intelligent and hardworking, her peers, many from wealthy, high society families, looked down on her. They sneered at her second-hand clothes, mocked her for working a part-time job, and whispered cruel remarks behind her back. "Did you see what Luna's wearing today? Looks like she got it from a thrift store dumpster," one girl snickered. "Oh, please, as if she could ever afford real designer brands. She should just quit and go back to whatever hole she came from," another added with a smirk. Despite their harsh words, Luna refused to let their cruelty break her spirit. She clenched her fists and lifted her chin, reminding herself why she was there. Every insult, every whisper behind her back, only fueled her determination to succeed. She juggled long hours of study with a part-time job to support herself, pushing forward despite the hardships, knowing that one day she would rise above them all. Sarah was one of the few bright spots in Luna's university life. Unlike their affluent peers, Sarah also came from a normal background and had earned her place at the university through a full scholarship. They bonded over their shared struggles, often studying together late into the night, pushing each other to keep going despite the pressures. Sarah was the only friend Luna had, her unwavering support a source of comfort in an otherwise harsh environment. As the final term approached, Sarah noticed the exhaustion weighing on Luna. "You need a break," she insisted one afternoon in the library. "If you don't take a breather now, you'll burn out before exams even begin." Luna sighed, rubbing her temples. "I don't have time for breaks, Sarah. I have work, assignments, and I need to start preparing for job applications." "Come on," Sarah coaxed, a teasing smile on her lips. "Just one weekend away. No books, no work, just fun. We'll go to the beach, maybe even dance a little. You deserve this." Luna hesitated, but Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious. "Fine." She finally relented with a small smile. "But just this once." Sarah grinned. "That's the spirit. Get ready for the best weekend of your life." On their first night out, Sarah insisted they go to a bar. "Come on, Luna, just one drink. Let's celebrate surviving this term," she coaxed with a playful grin. Luna hesitated, gripping her glass of water. "I don't know, Sarah. I've never really been into drinking." Sarah rolled her eyes. "That's because you've never had a reason to let loose. Look, I promise, just one or two, and if you don't like it, we can leave." Luna sighed, finally giving in. "Fine, but you owe me pancakes tomorrow morning." Sarah laughed. "Deal! Now let's have some fun." One drink turned into two, then three, and soon Luna found herself laughing more freely than she had in years. For the first time, she felt unburdened, free from the worries of exams, work, and the weight of being an outsider. But as the night wore on, the drinks dulled her senses and her mind became a blur. The last thing she remembered was Sarah trying to guide her back to the hotel before everything turned hazy. Before she knew it, she stumbled into what she thought was her hotel room. Her body felt heavy, her mind clouded with alcohol, and as she slipped under the covers, she surrendered to what she believed was a dream so vivid and intoxicating that it made her blush even in her sleep. She felt warmth, a strong touch, the gentle caress of hands exploring her as soft whispers filled the air. The sensations felt so real, so intense. But, in her drunken haze, she accepted it as nothing more than a fantasy. By morning, the remnants of the dream still lingered on her skin, making her cheeks burn. But as her foggy mind cleared, reality hit her like a freight train. She wasn't in her room. The scent of sandalwood and a distinctly masculine presence surrounded her. Panic surged through her veins as she turned her head and saw a man, a stranger, lying beside her, his features serene in slumber. Her heart pounded violently as she noticed the slight disarray of the sheets, the undeniable evidence of what had transpired. A horrified gasp escaped her lips and she scrambled out of bed, grabbing the nearest towel and clutching it around herself as if it could shield her from the weight of her mistake. Her clothes and belongings were scattered across the floor, and she gathered them in a frantic rush. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps as she threw one last glance at the man, terrified that he might wake up. Not giving herself a moment more to process, she bolted from the room, her bare feet padding against the cold hallway floor as she made her way to her own room as fast as possible. Shame, confusion, and panic swirled inside her, making it impossible to think clearly. All she knew was that she had to get out of there, away from him, away from whatever had happened the night before. Unbeknownst to her, the man in the room was none other than Adrian Davidson, the heir to the Davidson empire. After a heated argument with his father about his responsibilities in settling down, Adrian had stormed out, seeking solace in a bottle of whiskey. Lost in his thoughts and fueled by frustration, he had ended up at the same hotel, drowning his sorrows at the bar. His mind clouded with alcohol. He barely remembered stumbling into what he assumed was his own room, only to awaken to a reality he had never anticipated. When he awoke, his head pounded with the remnants of his intoxication, but something else caught his attention. A faint, intoxicating scent of sandalwood and vanilla. It was unmistakably a woman's fragrance, delicate yet lingering, clinging to the sheets and his skin. His confusion deepened when he noticed bloodstains on the sheets, his eyes widening as the reality of the night settled in. His mind raced back to flashes of the night before. A soft moan, the warmth of delicate fingers gripping him, the sensation of smooth skin beneath his touch. He could still feel the ghost of her lips on his, the way she had melted against him. And then, as if etched into his memory, he recalled a small birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon on her right shoulder. Adrian sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair, astonished by the realization. He had never been one to lose control, never had a night of passion he couldn't fully recall. But this woman, whoever she was, had completely shattered that streak. And rather than regret, an odd sense of intrigue filled him. Who was she? And why did he feel like he had just experienced something far more significant than a drunken mistake? By the time Luna realized her mistake, she was horrified. She left before Adrian woke up, retreating into her usual life as though nothing had happened. When she returned to the hotel room she shared with Sarah, her best friend immediately sensed something was off. "Okay, Spill, you were gone all night and you look like you've seen a ghost," Sarah teased, plopping onto the bed next to Luna. "Did something interesting happen?" Luna hesitated, gripping the edge of the blanket, her face turning a deep shade of crimson. "I don't know what happened. I thought I was dreaming, but when I woke up, it was real." Sarah's eyes widened in excitement. "Oh my God! Luna! Who was he? Was he at least hot?" Luna groaned, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know, I just ran." Sarah let out a dramatic sigh. "Wow. My best friend had a mysterious one-night stand and I didn't even get to meet the guy. Unbelievable. But hey, welcome to the club." Luna swallowed hard and whispered, "Sarah, I was a virgin." Sarah's mouth fell open. You what? She screeched, clutching her chest as if Luna had just confessed to murder. Oh my God, this just got way more intense, Luna. You lost your virginity to a total stranger and you don't even know his name? This is insane. I know, Luna hissed, panic rising in her voice. And that's why we are never talking about this again. Ever. Sarah blinked before bursting into uncontrollable laughter. Oh, honey, you think you can just forget something like this? Buckle up, bestie, because this is going to haunt you for a long, long time. Despite the banter, Luna felt the weight of what had happened pressing on her. As they returned to university, she tried to put the night behind her. She buried herself in her studies, pushing away the lingering memories and the emotions she couldn't quite understand. But then the symptoms began. She felt exhausted all the time, waves of nausea creeping up on her at the most inconvenient moments. At first she blamed stress, but when she realized her cycle was late, a sickening thought took hold. One nervous trip to the pharmacy and a pregnancy test later, her worst fears were confirmed. She was pregnant. The news sent her into a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, fear, and, surprisingly, an overwhelming sense of determination. She had spent her life longing for a family, and now she had one growing inside her. Unlike her, they would have a mother who loved them unconditionally, no matter what. Realizing she wouldn't be able to apply for traditional, legal jobs due to her growing belly, Luna took a well-paid freelance job and started saving. She planned meticulously for her children's future, and through it all, Sarah was by her side. From late-night ice cream cravings to dramatic mood swings, Sarah stuck with her like glue. Luna, I swear if you make me run to the store for pickles and peanut butter again, I'm moving out. Sarah groaned, dropping a grocery bag onto the counter. Luna pouted, rubbing her belly. But the babies want it, and you love me, so you'll do it. Sarah let out a dramatic sigh. I do love you. Against my better judgment. Despite the exhaustion, Luna found comfort in Sarah's unwavering presence. The weight of becoming a single mother was heavy, but Sarah never let her feel alone. When Luna gave birth, Sarah was right there, holding her hand and shouting encouragements between her own tears. You got this, bestie. 2 little angels are about to make their grand entrance. When she finally held her identical twin boys, all of Luna's fears melted away. They became her entire world. For the first 3 years, she worked from home, balancing motherhood and career building. Sarah remained the honorary aunt, spoiling the boys and keeping Luna sane. Lucas, you're not allowed to use Auntie Sarah as your personal jungle gym, Luna scolded one evening, trying not to laugh as Sarah lay on the couch buried under 2 giggling toddlers. It's fine, I accept my fate, Sarah groaned. If I survive, I demand payment in cupcakes. For the first 3 years, Luna dedicated herself entirely to her children. She meticulously planned every moment of their early years, ensuring they had a nurturing environment filled with warmth, laughter, and love. From singing lullabies at night to reading endless storybooks and cheering on their first steps, she was there for every milestone. Despite the exhaustion, she relished in every giggle, every sleepy cuddle, and every tiny hand wrapped around her finger. Balancing work and motherhood was no easy feat, but Luna found a way. She took on freelance legal work, drafting contracts and advising small businesses from home, using every opportunity to build her professional reputation while staying close to her boys. Late at night, when they were fast asleep, she poured herself into her legal studies, preparing for the day when she would step into the field full-time. Sarah, true to her promise, remained by her side. Luna, I don't know how you do it, she mused one evening, sipping on a cup of coffee while watching Luna rock both boys to sleep. You're like a superhero, lawyer by night, full-time mom by day. Do you ever sleep? Luna chuckled softly. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now. But one day when I make it, when I can give them everything they deserve, it'll all be worth it. You're already giving them everything, Sarah pointed out with a smile. They have you. When the boys turned 3, Luna knew it was time to take the next step. She officially entered the legal world, taking a position at a prestigious firm. Though balancing her career and motherhood was challenging, she proved herself to be an exceptional lawyer. She handled complex cases with sharp intellect and unyielding determination, quickly earning a formidable reputation in the field. Through it all, Sarah cheered her on, as she always had, reminding her that she was never alone. Her boys, Lucas and Luca, were her pride and joy. As they grew, they became mischievous little adventurers, always keeping her on her toes. When they turned 6, they were invited to a birthday party. Everything seemed perfect until they accidentally ate strawberries, something Luna hadn't realized they were severely allergic to. Panicked, she rushed them to the hospital, her heart pounding with fear. Every second felt like an eternity as she clutched their tiny hands, whispering reassurances even as she fought back tears. The moment the doctors took them in, she felt utterly helpless, pacing the waiting room with her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. When the doctors finally emerged, assuring her that the boys were stabilized, her legs nearly gave out from sheer relief. Tears streamed down her face as she rushed to their bedsides, kissing their foreheads and holding their small hands in hers. "You scared me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You can't do that to Mommy, okay?" Lucas, with his usual mischievous grin, patted her cheek. "Sorry, Mommy. We didn't know strawberries were bad." Luca nodded solemnly. "We won't eat them again. Promise." Luna exhaled shakily, hugging them both. "Good, because I don't think my heart can take another scare like this." But as she stepped out to find the doctor, to express her gratitude, her little rascals, now fully recovered, grew bored and slipped out of the room. Their giggles echoed through the hospital corridors as they ran, seeking their next grand adventure. Their adventure led them straight into an old man in a wheelchair. Mr. Davidson, a dignified but ailing patriarch, looked down at the 2 identical boys who had just crashed into him. Something about them seemed oddly familiar, their striking resemblance to his own son, Adrian. His sharp eyes narrowed. "Who are your parents, young men?" Lucas, ever the talkative one, proudly declared, "Our mommy is Luna." Mr. Davidson's heart skipped a beat. These boys, they were unmistakably his grandsons. The sharpness of their eyes, the familiar curve of their smiles. It was like looking at a younger version of his own son. His breath hitched as realization settled heavily upon him. Adrian had no idea he had children. A mix of shock, disbelief, and an odd sense of joy swirled within him. How had this happened? How had these boys been hidden from his family for so long? His fingers trembled slightly as he reached out, as if to confirm that they were real, flesh and blood, not just figments of his imagination. He swallowed hard before finally speaking, his voice laced with emotion. "Why are you handsome boys in the hospital?" Luca replied shyly. "We ate strawberries and got very sick, but now we are all better." Mr. Davidson's eyes widened slightly, his sharp mind instantly making a connection. The Davidson men had always shared an unusual hereditary trait. Every male in the family was severely allergic to strawberries. His breath hitched as he studied the boys more closely, his gaze lingering on their features. They weren't just familiar, they were unmistakably his blood. His hands trembled slightly as he processed the realization. "Strawberries, you say?" he murmured, more to himself than to them. The certainty settled deep in his bones. These were his grandsons. And Adrian had no idea. The boys, seemingly unfazed, soon grew restless and ran off in search of their mother. Mr. Davidson, however, remained frozen in place, his mind whirling with questions. He needed proof. Though the resemblance and the allergy were undeniable, he had to be sure. Using his vast resources and connections, he quietly ordered a DNA comparison between the boys and Adrian's genetic records, leveraging his influence in the medical world to expedite the process. As the days passed and he awaited the results, Mr. Davidson took it upon himself to investigate Luna. What he uncovered only deepened his admiration for her. She was not just a single mother, she was a fighter, a self-made woman who had built an incredible career while raising 2 children alone. Her legal prowess had already earned her a formidable reputation, and the way she carried herself, resilient, intelligent, and unyielding, was nothing short of admirable. She wasn't just good enough to be part of the Davidson family. She was exactly the kind of woman who belonged in it. When the DNA results arrived, confirming beyond any doubt that Lucas and Luca were Adrian's sons, Mr. Davidson wasted no time. He arranged a meeting with Adrian, confronting him with the truth he had uncovered. "You have sons, Adrian," he stated firmly, sliding the test results across the desk. Adrian, who had been nursing a glass of whiskey, stared at his father, then at the papers. His usually composed demeanor faltered as he skimmed the documents. "What? That's impossible," he murmured, his heart pounding. He hadn't been with a woman in years, not since that one night that haunted his memories. He had no interest in any woman since, and his father had grown desperate for him to produce an heir. Mr. Davidson sat back, observing his son with sharp eyes. "I wanted you to secure the next generation, but after years of hoping, I thought it was too late. And now, out of nowhere, you already have your heir. 2 of them. It's time you met their mother." Adrian's jaw tightened as he stared at the documents, his emotions a whirlwind of shock and confusion. "Twins?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He had always wanted to be a father, but never like this. Never in a way where he had no memory of the woman who had given birth to his children. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "This doesn't make sense. Who is she? How did this happen?" He was overwhelmed by the idea of fatherhood thrust upon him so unexpectedly. Mr. Davidson smirked knowingly. "That is what I intend to find out. And you, my son, will meet her." Adrian tensed, frustration bubbling inside him. "I don't want to meet any woman." His father raised an eyebrow, unbothered by his resistance. "Oh, but you will. These boys have been raised without their father, and that is about to change." Adrian clenched his fists. He didn't want just any woman, he only wanted her. The one from that night. The one whose face he couldn't recall. Only the intoxicating scent of vanilla and sandalwood, the warmth of her touch, the softness of her lips, and the crescent-shaped birthmark that had haunted his dreams for years. His father raised an eyebrow. "You may not care, but those boys deserve to know their father, and I must meet the woman who has raised them on her own. She is remarkable, Adrian. You should know who she is as well. Take responsibility of your actions and act like man." Adrian sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine. I'll meet her, father. But that does not mean anything." Meanwhile, Mr. Davidson wasted no time. He visited Luna personally, greeting her with a warm but determined smile as he handed her the DNA results. "My dear, there is no denying it. Lucas and Luca are my grandsons. And as a lawyer, you know that 5 years have passed, which means their father has no legal right to claim them. But that is not why I am here. I do not wish to take them away from you. I simply want to know my grandsons, and for them to know where they come from." Luna's sharp eyes studied him carefully. She knew the law well, and she also knew exactly who the Davidsons were. One of the wealthiest and most influential families in the country. If Mr. Davidson had wanted to take her children away, he had the means to do so. But instead he was here, personally seeking a connection with his grandsons. That alone made her pause. She took a deep breath, weighing her options. If he truly meant no harm and simply wanted to be part of their lives, then denying him that right would be unfair to Lucas and Luca. Besides, as a lawyer, she understood that after 5 years, Adrian had no automatic legal claim over them unless she agreed. Mr. Davidson had to be sincere. After a moment, she exhaled and nodded. All right, you can spend time with them, but only if they are comfortable. For the next few days, Mr. Davidson bonded with Lucas and Luca, enchanted by their energy and intelligence. The boys quickly grew attached to their newfound grandfather, enjoying the stories he told them and the way he spoiled them with small treats and attention. "Grandpa, will you play knights with us?" Lucas asked eagerly, holding up a toy sword. "Of course, my brave warriors, but be warned, I am a formidable opponent." Mr. Davidson chuckled as he took up a makeshift shield, delighting in their giggles as they played. The more time he spent with them, the more he saw Adrian in their mannerisms, their determination, and even their mischievous grins. He had lost hope of ever seeing his son settle down and provide an heir. Yet here they were, two perfect little boys who carried the Davidson bloodline. Finally, after an afternoon of laughter and storytelling, Mr. Davidson turned to Luna with a serious expression. "Would you like to meet their father?" Luna stiffened, shock washing over her. She had spent years raising her boys alone, never once thinking she would come face to face with the man from that night. The memory of that evening had never truly faded. In the quiet moments of her life, it crept back into her mind. His touch, the warmth, the undeniable connection she had felt, even in her intoxicated haze. She had convinced herself it was just a dream, but now, the reality of it was standing in front of her, demanding to be acknowledged. Her heart pounded, uncertainty twisting in her chest. Would he even remember her? Did he care? More importantly, what would this mean for her children? She took a deep breath, pushing away the nerves, knowing that avoiding this confrontation would only prolong the inevitable. "I suppose it is only fair," she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes, I'll meet him." When the evening came, she was invited to dinner at an elegant restaurant. As she stepped out of the cab, her heart pounded, a mix of anxiety and anticipation coursing through her. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her dress, mentally preparing herself for the encounter. Would he recognize her? Would he even care? A million thoughts swirled in her mind as she walked toward the entrance. The scent of freshly baked bread and expensive wine filled the air, but it did little to calm her nerves. She had rehearsed countless scenarios, imagining what he might say, how he might react. Would he resent her for keeping the children a secret? Or would he be indifferent, dismissing that night as a meaningless mistake? Swallowing hard, she took a deep breath and stepped inside, her pulse racing as she searched for the man who had unknowingly changed her life forever. As she stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. Adrian was even more striking than she had imagined. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a chiseled jawline and piercing amber eyes that held a serious, almost unreadable expression. He carried himself with the commanding air of a man used to getting his way. But there was something else, something guarded, as though he had built walls around himself. Their eyes met, and a jolt of recognition flashed across his face, though he remained composed. But as he moved to pull out her chair, his hand hesitated. His sharp gaze locked onto her exposed shoulder, where the crescent-shaped birthmark rested. At that moment, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood surrounded him, and his entire demeanor shifted. His expression, once so serious, turned to one of absolute shock. His breath hitched as memories flooded back. The intoxicating night, the warmth of her skin, the sensation that had never left him. Luna swallowed, sensing the storm raging inside him. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Adrian nodded slowly, his fingers tightening on the back of her chair. "I never forgot," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I tried to move on, but no one else ever compared. I could never forget you." Luna's heart ached at his words, the years of loneliness suddenly feeling heavier. "Neither could I," she confessed. Adrian exhaled sharply as if grounding himself. Then, his voice became steady, determined. I won't let another day go by without making things right. I will take care of you and our children for the rest of my life. I will make up for all the lost time, Luna. I promise you. Luna's breath caught, her heart hammering in her chest. She had carried the burden of single motherhood alone for so long, never once daring to dream of having someone by her side. And now, the father of her children, the man who had unknowingly left a permanent mark on her life, was standing before her, vowing to make amends. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. You don't have to do this, Adrian, she whispered, her voice trembling. We've been fine on our own. Adrian stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. But you shouldn't have had to do it alone, Luna. I should have been there. I won't fail you again. A single tear slipped down Luna's cheek, and for the first time in years, Luna felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by something new, hope and family.